Hello YouTube friends, long time no see. It's actually 12 months next week since I published a video, so I thought I really ought to get myself into gear and do another one on the off chance that you might be interested in what's been going on in my wargaming life. The last video I did was actually about my Irish Williamite Wars project. I was doing an Imaginations project loosely based on the Williamite Wars between James and William, and in Ireland, and also sort of drafting in a little bit of a Marlburian element to it. That was the theory anyway. Well, I've made a bit of progress, which I'll show you later on. I've made progress with both infantry and cavalry, and in fact I've drafted in some excess English Civil War figures which I've been able to use for artillery and commanders. So that went, it's stalled now, about which more later. I also finished off my World War II Blitzkrieg French project in 28mm, and I did a German Blitzkrieg army in 28mm as well, that's turned out quite well. And again, if you stick around long enough and don't get bored, I'll show you what we've got there too. I was branching into World War II in 20mm because I'd read a few books on the Tunisian campaign, which I thought was fascinating. The fact that it's not a wholly desert campaign appealed to me, and the fact that it's only a relatively short campaign as well. So I started doing a few bits and pieces there, more or less experimenting, and well, let's put it this way, it's not gone very far. I've got plenty of unmade kits because I do quite like making kits and painting them. But again, that one is that's another one that's really well, it's in the pending tray. And in fact, talking of pending trays, I decided I had a good look at what I was doing with my wargaming last year. And I decided that I'd basically got too many different collections which I simply wasn't using. And part of that was down, I think, to the fact that well, lockdown obviously had an effect on it. But also I just couldn't seem to find a set of rules that really appealed to me. I think what I'd done is I'd launched into various projects or topics without really giving thought to how I was going to game them and the advantages involved in gaming them, and of course the disadvantages associated with them as well. For example, I happened to acquire quite a large collection of American Civil War figures, 28mm and painted. A very nice collection it was too, both Confederate and Union, but I couldn't find a set of rules that really appealed. I tried black powder. Another one was Malvern Hill. I've written them down because there aren't many of the damn things. Excuse me. Pickett's Charge and Bonnie Blue Flag. And I just really couldn't make any of them work entirely as I wanted them to. And the same thing happened with an American War of Independence collection which I acquired. Again, largely painted, although I did do several battalions of troops myself, British and continental. And the rules I'd got for that were black powder, the ubiquitous black powder, Rise and Fight Again, and British Grenadier. Didn't really go into Rise and Fight Again. British Grenadier looked incredibly complicated, so I didn't bother with that, and we were back to black powder. And we weren't, I say we, my main wargaming buddy and I weren't playing that many due to lockdown restrictions, and then when the restrictions began to be lifted we still found other things to do. But basically I became disillusioned with the rules, and so I went off the subject really a bit too. So what I decided to do is I decided towards the end of last year to have a really careful rethink on what I was doing with my wargaming figures and where I was going. I concluded that I'd got too many projects going, too many periods, and that it was time for a clear out. So I then promptly put my American War of Independence, oops, sorry about that, put my American War of Independence figures up for sale, and they went. I then put my, well, actually the reverse is the case. I put the American Civil War figures up for sale and they went. And then I put the American War of Independence figures and they went. I also put the French army for the Blitzkrieg period on eBay and that went. But I decided to keep the German Blitzkrieg army because soft spot for them, I think, really. And I do like the period. I do like that period. I couldn't warm to the French, strangely enough. I did this army and just couldn't really warm to it, even though I never actually played with the darn things. So those periods all went out the window. So they've gone now. I've no American War of Independence, I've no American Civil War, and the French World War II have gone. Meanwhile, I was still ploughing ahead with Napoleonics. Napoleonics has always been my first love, other than when I was a very youngster and I started doing Second World War with Donald Featherston's rules, but that was over 50 years ago, so that was quite a long time ago. And I decided that what I would do is I would look at doing some Württembergers, because again I was reading up on the campaigns of 1809 through Jack Gill's trilogy, and he did an additional book which dealt with Napoleon's allies, and in that he covered the Württembergers, and I thought, well, they might be nice to include as a French allied group. So I decided to have a go at doing some Württembergers, but only a modest group, if you like, a couple of brigades at most. And also I decided that I would actually ask somebody to paint them for me, using the money which I had acquired from the sale of the American War of Independence and the other bits and pieces. So the Württembergers are up to about 5 battalions now. I'm intending that they'll not exceed 10 battalions. And that's something I can show you as well later on. I'm not going to drone at you for very long though. What I'll do is I'll show you some figures as well, and then perhaps get back to the overall theme of this broadcast. I decided that it was time to restructure my wargaming arrangements. I'd got rid of several periods. I looked at my French, which were, well, extensive. And even though I'd got a fairly extensive board, which I can probably just pan around and show you. This is my table, if I'm looking at it correctly. Yeah, it runs out at, it's 10 feet long when it's at full extension now, and 5 feet wide. So it's quite big. But I couldn't get a decent looking game. I had 4 regiments of French cuirassiers in 12s, and I had my French infantry, and I also had some French light cavalry, some chasseurs à cheval. And when I lined them up on the table against the Prussians, which I'd got, which wasn't a very big army, the table was just too crowded. It just wasn't looking like I wanted it to look. And so I looked at the French and how they could be reduced. I'd already reorganised them into 36-man battalions from 24 to reduce the number of battalions I'd got. The footprint was slightly larger, obviously, but I just didn't feel comfortable with it. And I think that was made all the more obvious, to me anyway, was the fact that I couldn't find a set of rules that I could settle on with playing with my gaming buddy. We tried General Darnay. I was initially very enthusiastic about General Darnay, but then, I don't know it's my age or what, but it began to give me real brain ache, and so I decided that I couldn't really carry on with them. They were just too complicated. You were spending 20 minutes doing something. This is in my personal opinion. I mean, you know, there are those out there who really like General Darnay and who get on well with them, so that's fine. But I was finding that you were spending 20 minutes going through a particular sequence when a couple of dice could have solved it in a matter of moments. Now, I appreciate that's not realistic and that's not suiting everybody, but I just found it was just getting on my nerves. So, General de Brigade, tried those, same result really. Black Powder, okay. I think what was happening was that I had got too many periods, too many sets of rules, and wasn't able to really settle on one that I really knew thoroughly and could simply pick up and play a game with. And I became very disillusioned with the whole hobby generally. That's one of the reasons I haven't posted any videos, basically. I just simply couldn't be bothered. I did a bit of painting. I'm not the fastest painter in the world, as I think I've said before, but I did a bit of painting, and then I just basically fell out of love with the hobby, which I thought was a shame because I've been doing this since I was sort of 12 years old, 16 years old. So serious changes were made. Still haven't quite finished yet. I decided with the Württembergers, for example, that I was looking at doing 14 battalions. Why was I looking at doing 14 battalions? I was never going to get 14 battalions of Württembergers and 14 battalions of French on my table. It's simply too many. I'm not a member of a regular club. I used to be at a local club, but it fell apart in my opinion, and so I tend to game with friends now. And I just thought that a change was needed. So, having fallen out of love with the hobby, got rid of a load of stuff, I'm now at the stage where I think I've pretty much got my head together and decided what I need to do. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at changing scale completely. I'm going to look at changing to 15mm scale. I say 15mm as distinct from 18mm or 20mm for the Napoleonics, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to buy figures and find that I'm spending so much time painting 18mm figures that I could just as easily have done 28mm. I decided that wasn't the way to go. So at the moment I'm looking at doing 15mm. I am checking on various manufacturers. I've been following Fraser von Ketteringham's video with his potential project for 15mm, and there are a couple of other people out there who are doing the same thing, 15mm I mean. I've also looked at the Epic that Warlord Games have done, but that's down to Waterloo, and I'm Waterlooed out. I've been there umpteen times, and I don't think Waterloo is necessarily typical of the Napoleonic period. It was one battle, and there was a lot more going on than just Waterloo. But I like the appearance. I think that it's caught something which I really favour. Anyway, enough of that for the moment. I've been going on too long. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop the camera and then I'll show you what we've got in terms of actual figures. Well, I apologise in advance for the rather shaky camera work because I'm holding the camera now rather than it being on the tripod. What we have here are some of the German Blitzkrieg figures that I've done. They're mostly plastic, Warlord, and they'd been done initially for Chain of Command. That was what I set out to do. They've turned out okay, actually. I hope you can see them clearly enough. I hope so. They're quite okay. They're done to a reasonable wargaming standard, I think. I had a bit of a laugh actually with a couple of them because, oops, sorry. What I decided to do was I'd do a sniper team, and a couple of the figures actually have glasses on. And given that I'm as blind as a bat without my glasses, I thought it might be a good idea to do a sniper team with glasses. So what we have here if I can just bring him into view, here he is we've got a sniper. I don't know if you can see or not, but he's wearing specs because he's short-sighted like me. And the sniper has an assistant, and his assistant has a pair of binoculars. And let's get him in the picture. There he is. Whoop. And he's got specs as well. So I thought it might be a bit of a joke to have two extremely short-sighted sniper and observers for the Germans. And we've got some supporting stuff there as well. I've got some support weapons which I still need to build up, kits and so forth. Going round here, we've got 37mm anti-tank gun. We've got the 75mm howitzer, mortar, and anti-tank rifle team, and an MG. And then these are the sections which I've done. So they're pretty much complete. I don't think there's much more needed for those. I'm quite satisfied with those. So that's the Germans for the Blitzkrieg. Okay, so here we have the Williamite Irish Wars imaginations group. The artillery piece is actually English Civil War, where it was bought for English Civil War. That's an English Civil War officer which has been drafted across. So is him, and so is he. On the regiments themselves, we've got one mixed regiment here. These are actually done for the War of Three Kings rules by Barry Hilton, and they're quite good rules actually. But they call for 3 bases. The base at the back, the pike base, is essentially for aesthetic purposes. That's all. You don't really need it. So anyway, we've got one mixed regiment there. I think I'd probably call that one a militia regiment. Red was very common on both sides in this period as well, it seems. So that's another regiment or battalion. The casualty, what I've done is I made a habit of doing a casualty figure for each battalion, so I can keep a record of the casualties rather than a dice or whatever. Another regiment at the back. Again, you're working on 18 figures, 20 figures, or something in that region. There's no set figure requirement. And yet another unit. So out of for this collection so far, as you can see, we've got 5 units of infantry. That's not very many. I'm going to need a few more than that, but the games aren't huge, so that's quite adequate really just to start off with. Obviously, if I'm going to do both sides, I'm going to need at least the same again, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So that is the Williamite, Jacobite, so-called Irish army. For the moment, at least that's the infantry element, and I'll show you the cavalry next. Okay, next is the cavalry. War of Three Kings, beneath the Lily Banners rules, work on the basis of squadrons of cavalry, and what you have here is a unit of 2 squadrons, and there are 6 figures, as you can see, on each base. They can operate with 2 base squadrons on their own as units. You don't have to have 4 like this. I just happen to have done it this way. Some of my other units that I'm in the process of, I'm going to be painting, they're actually 6-men units, but they can be a bit brittle. So I've got these cavalry. These are all front rank. Another unit also completed, and then the 3rd regiment, which is intended to be Portland's regiment, I think. But because it's an imaginations project, there is no set historical reference point for them. They look nice. That's why I'm doing them. So if I zoom out a bit, you can see And that just gives you some idea of actually the how much their footprint is on the table. It's not too big, but it's adequate, and that's why I'm reasonably satisfied with how this period's going. So this is the pending project of the Williamite. There's still a way to go, but that's how far I've got in the last 12 months. As I said, I'm not a fast painter. And then finally we've got the Württembergers. We have got 5 battalions. What we're looking at here is these are a Jaeger battalion, which I've decided to pick figures of march attack pose rather than skirmish pose, because I will be doing some skirmishing Jaegers. And then behind them we have the 1st and 2nd battalions of a line regiment, and the same over here. As I said, I haven't painted these, they've been painted for me. I've just based them and put the standards on, but the painting is really very, very impressive. I'm really pleased with how they've been done. The detail is puts my painting to shame, that's for sure. I think they look great. I've decided to go for 20-man battalions. I've been asked about that by a couple of my Wargaming buddies, but I don't want huge battalions. I want them to give a reasonably small footprint on the table, so that I can actually do a Napoleonic game with 28s, and it should look fairly good. The jury's out though. I've got some cavalry to do, and I've got some artillery. I may just end up selling all of these as well at some point in the future in a moment of madness, but for the moment I think they'll go okay. I have to say though, I'm still in a state of flux on this Napoleonic business, because 15mm on a table this size, I know that time is a factor as well, you know, you've only got so long to game with, but on a 15mm scale I could get a fairly impressive looking Napoleonic battle here, but we'll see. I'm also dead keen on the English Civil War as well, and that in 15mm would look pretty cool too, I think. So that's it for the moment. I think I've gone on long enough. It's been a bit self-indulgent this, I must confess, and I apologise for that, but I hope it's been at least of some interest. And what I will do is I'll make a point of doing another video fairly soon, with perhaps a little bit more of a positive note to it. But anyway, I hope all your projects are going well, that you are getting some gaming done now that the lockdown restrictions are at last leaving us, and I hope that you're all well. And I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Cheers for now. Oh, actually, before I go, there is one thing, a word from our sponsor, and that is that if you are interested in any of my figures, if you look at my site on eBay, I go under the rather dubious sounding title of Rosie Bud 54. The reason for that is because Rosie was a much loved dog who we lost a few years back, and I decided that when I did set up my eBay account I'd dedicate it to her, so that's the reason for the title. But if you have a look on there you might find something of interest, and once again, thanks very much for watching. Cheers now.